Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another CFWC workshop. Today is an officer that is often not asked a lot of questions, but is very integral to how your club or district runs. So today our workshop is the Secretary 101, and it's all about those first days in office. What do you need? How do you find the things that you need? What if you didn't get anything at all from the secretary before you? Where do you go to find the resources? Our speaker today is our very own CFWC Cindy Sanders, and we are very happy to have everyone. So welcome and enjoy this very informative workshop.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here this morning and joining us for this wonderful workshop. You know, I have to admit it was a little bit of a struggle. I want to make sure to give you information that you can use, of course, but I also wanted to make it fun and a little bit engaging too. So bear with me. You know, our workshop today is going to cover a lot of information that I know that you'll be able to use. But the main thing that I want to let you know is that you can contact me anytime. If after this workshop you still have questions, please contact me. I do have a slide with my contact information that I'm not going to be able to use now because I didn't realize. Thank you, Debbie, for that heads up. So I'm not sure how we'll get that information to you, but we will let you know how to find me before the end of this workshop is over. So what I have for you this morning is a slide presentation, and we are going to go right to that. All right, Recording Secretary 101. Welcome, everyone. From a rookie to a racehorse. Here we go. So as we look at what is a recording secretary, when was the first term used and why? Back in the 14th and 15th centuries, there's actually men that held the role of recording secretary. They took notes, they wrote letters, they did things for noble people and royal people. They were pretty prestigious in these positions. So that's kind of, if you go back to as far in history as you can go, that's what they tell us anyway, from the research that I did. So I give you a proper introduction. My name is Cindy Sanders. I'm the California Federation of Women's Clubs Recording Secretary for the 2022-2024 term. And as Ms. Sonia Holtz mentioned, this is a state board position. And today we're going to go over the basic duties of the recording secretary at the club, district, and state levels. But like I said, before we go forward, let's go back and look at a little bit of interesting other history about recording secretaries. So yeah, those men took notes. They kept the company books and they wrote important letters until this. The typewriter was invented in 1868. The first typewriter was patented by Christopher Latham Scholes in 1868. And during the summer of 1867, he worked with a machinist and another inventor to develop this machine. In 1873, they had created 50 typewriters for sale, but no one wanted to buy them. So they sold the production rights to a gun manufacturer, Philo Remington. Who would have thought? So in 1874, the first Remington typewriter appeared. It was sold by E. Remington and Sons and featured only capital letters. 4 years later, the Remington No. 2 debuted, and it was the first typewriter to offer both uppercase and lowercase letters. And it was actually the typewriter that helped increase the clerical role for women. Why? Because we had small enough hands to use the keys. Who knew? The other thing that helped, so here we go. So here's on the left side of my screen is the very first Remington. And then on the right-hand side of the screen is the typewriter that I grew up using, the Royal. So the modern device opened doors for women, changing the male-dominated environment. And as the women became more progressive, of course, and their small hands gave them that advantage of using the typewriter, next came World War I. And as the men left, there were more opportunities for women to fill in those clerical positions. Then secretarial schools opened, offering training for the ladies. And in 1942, the National Secretaries Association was formed as women united together to get better pay and better working conditions. So let's look at the recording secretary of today. Let's look at the who, what, where, and why. And isn't that a great picture of some of our wonderful GFWC founding mothers? I don't know the year, I wish I did, but I found that picture and thought I would throw that in there for you. Can't imagine, look at those outfits, gotta love it. All right, so first let's look at who. Who is the recording secretary and could it be you? Let's look at the experience necessary for the recording secretary position. Well, I want to share a secret with you. You can share it if you want. I have never, before this position, taken minutes before in an elected position, ever. So that means that if I can do it, you can certainly do it. So yes, this is my first time being a recording secretary. I've been in positions where I've read minutes and had minutes taken for me. So I knew a little bit about what the position entailed. I did some research. I contacted the previous CFWC recording secretary, Miss Rita Alaman, and asked if we could meet, and she was absolutely wonderful. She graciously agreed, and I was able to ask questions and get a lot of answers. I took notes, lots of notes, and she gifted me with a procedure book with information from many of the past state recording secretaries. And this is my procedure book that I will be handing on to the next recording secretary of the state. The information has been wonderful and has really helped me to learn how to do my job. The next thing I did was I checked the CFWC bylaws, which can be found in the CFWC yearbook. I'm sure your clubs and your districts all have their own set of bylaws, and they should have a mention in there about what the duties of the recording secretary are. So the bylaws were a great source of information. And then another wonderful source of information is your parliamentarian. At the club position, if you're a club secretary, please check with your club parliamentarian. And if she doesn't have the answers, ask if she could check with the district parliamentarian for you. That's kind of how we do our chain of command. If you still have unanswered questions or in need of any kind, if there's anything that I can do, please contact me. I'd be happy to help you. I was going to provide my contact information on a slide. Not sure how I'm going to do that yet, but we'll work it out. We'll get my information to anyone on here that needs it. All right, so what experience is needed? Not really any, as long as you do your research first. Every club in the California Federation of Women's Clubs organization has a recording secretary, and so does the 18 districts in CFWC. The CFWC has a recording secretary, me. That's an elected position. It's a 2-year term, and it puts me on the executive committee. The candidate running for the office of recording secretary for the state, if you're so interested, must have an endorsement from their club and district as outlined in the CFWC bylaws. Here you go back to this again, and must have served for 2 years on the CFWC executive board. So what are the duties of the recording secretary? Well, they're pretty basic, really, as outlined in the bylaws for the state. The secretary takes the minutes of convention, executive committee, and executive board meetings. Then I distribute the minutes of the meeting via email. And also one other thing that I do at the state meetings is I'm in charge of the roll sheets that are out for everyone to sign as they come in. And then those roll sheets go to the finance team so that they can make sure that everyone is there that needs to be. Then at the end of my term, the minutes are bound along with the call, the agendas, and all the reports that you give copies of when you give your reports at the board meetings. And it's bound into a book. There's 2 of them that are made. One goes to the state president, and the other one goes into our archives. And then also listed in the bylaws, the very last is duties as requested by the CFWC president. So Barbara, if you ever have anything you need me to do, it says in the bylaws, that's my job. So one of the other things that means that you have to be at the meetings to take the minutes. So you have to, so in my case, I have to attend all these CFWC conventions and the state board meetings wherever they are held. So as we reviewed, we'll go over a little review here. Bylaws are found in the CFWC yearbook. Procedure book should be provided by your predecessor. Check with your club, district, state parliamentarian, and your previous recording secretary. Those are all great sources of information for you. Now, let's see, what is next? All right. So the minutes that are kept by the recording secretary become a legal record. And it's interesting, when you sign your name on the bottom of your minutes, that becomes the legal record of either your club, your district, or your state. So it's very important that those are accurate. Of course, we don't expect you to, as I did in the past, do shorthand. I don't think anyone even learns shorthand anymore. But anyway, it doesn't really matter, because if any of you have a handy dandy iPhone, there is a way that you can record on your iPhone. And what you do is you just go to your, oops, here we go. No, we don't need the calculator. You go on your iPhone and there's a little icon on there and it allows you to record. So what I have been doing is, and you have one thing you have to remember is before you record a meeting, please announce that to your audience that you're recording. And then you can start your recording. And then this has a capability of recording quite a bit. So what I do is I record the meeting, go home, type up the minutes, and then I wait until the minutes are actually approved before I erase the recording. And that's really important, because if there's ever a question about anything on the minutes, you can go back and listen to the recording and make sure that the information that you have recorded is correct. So that's a fun little, you don't have to go out and buy a separate device. You can, of course, they have recording devices that you can buy on Amazon. They're pretty inexpensive. The choice, of course, is completely yours. All right, so then those minutes are preserved as we talked about. So the other important thing about the minutes is it's important to keep track of ongoing items. Some things are started in one meeting and then they aren't finalized until the following meeting. So that's a really important component of the minutes and why we have to keep them. The other very important component of keeping minutes is it keeps a record of all the motions that are made. And of course, motions are very important because those are action items. And we'll be going into a little bit more in our next workshop, Secretary 102, in what exactly should be in the body of your minutes. We're not going to cover that today. We're just kind of doing an overview today and the introduction. All right, so those are pretty much the who and the what. And then, of course, we talked about the recording devices, showed you how to record on your phone. So let's look at the next slide. Well, actually, let's see. Yep, I think we're good there. All right, now, why secretariat? Well, did you know that a secretariat is actually the office of the secretary? And of course, Secretariat was the most famous racehorse of all time. He was named Horse of the Year, not once, but twice. He won the Triple Crown after a 25-year non-Triple Crown winner. He set records that are still still stand today. And that was 40 years ago when he ran on the track. He won the Belmont Stakes by 31 lengths. But the real story here was Elizabeth Ham. She was the secretary of Meadow Farm. Penny Cheney inherited Meadow Farm from her father. Penny didn't know a whole lot about running a racehorse stable, but she learned real quick. She had a lot against her. She was a woman in a man's world trying to figure this all out. And this beautiful red colt, by the time he was a year old, still didn't have a name. They had apply to the Jockey Club 10 times before a name was chosen. Now you have to understand that there's about 40 to 50,000 names that are submitted every single year to the Jockey Club. So to find a name that is unique is sometimes a challenge. So Miss Elizabeth Ham, as secretary, decided she was just going to submit the name Secretariat, and it was accepted. Now a secretariat is actually the body of the people that record for an organization. So it's like the plural of secretary. So I thought that was kind of fun and something that you needed to know, as we all should. Secretariat was one of a kind. So we're going to skip that little slide. You didn't see that one? All right. So let's review a little bit. What you're going to need before you start, and most of you have already started, so hopefully you have in your hands a procedure book. If you don't, let me know. I'll send you some copies out of mine. You need to meet with your predecessor. That's a whole wealth of information. Make sure that you have your questions written down in advance so that you can make really good use of your time together. Check your bylaws. Check with your parliamentarian if you still have questions. Call me if you need to. I am here for you. I would love to help you. And lastly on the list, watch the movie Secretariat. I highly recommend it. So that's kind of the end of my overview, and I'm wondering and I'm hoping that some of you have some great questions for me. So if you would unmute and ask any questions, I would love to help you out in any way that I can today.
All right, Cindy, did you take, I don't have her on gallery. Can you, let's see if we can remove your speaker, remove the spotlight. Okay, very good. All right, everyone. So she's asking if you have any questions, so please raise your hand. Terry Belch. Terry, you have a question for Cindy?
Yes. You had mentioned recording the motions. You have to record all motions. How technical do you need to get in recording that? And maybe technical is not the right word. If you record the motion, do you also have to say who made the motion, who seconded the motion, and if it was passed by how many? Or do you just say a motion was made and passed or whatever?
Right. So Terry, I'll cover this a little bit more in my next workshop, but to answer your question, the motions are very important that you record them verbatim. They have to say who made the motion, exactly how the motion was written or presented, and the motion should be given to you in writing. So if you're in a meeting and someone is going to propose a motion, please have a motion form. We use one that looks just like this. It's very basic. It just has our heading at the top and it says motion form. Then it has the date, the name, and the person's title and space for them to write out the motion. So you really need to have motion forms for your club so that when they present a motion, you can make sure that the motion is correct in the minutes. Thank you. That's a very good question.
Thank you.
All right, so our next question or comment comes from Susan. Susan, you have a question?
Yes, she mentioned that if we don't have procedure books, and I have to admit in our club, we don't have procedure books. You said you'd give a copy, but I wondered if copies of all of the procedure books could be made available or if they are available so that we could begin to get a handle on that.
Very good. We will make a note of that and we'll make the request to the executive board. Thank you very much. I appreciate that suggestion. Our next question or comment comes from Marilyn. Marilyn?
Thank you, ladies. I just want to tell you that, well, two things very interesting. I did not know what recording secretary entailed until I became it, and it's a lot. And I'm thank God that you're going to do that next workshop about motions and recommendations and all of that, because I have to do all that. But Abby and I, she's my district president, we were talking the other day, and she said, hey, do you want to record? And I didn't know what it was going to entail. So I'm glad that you brought it up. So I want to ask you, so on my iPhone that I have, somewhere on here, I can record. So I take my iPhone and I put it by the mic on the podium where they're going to be speaking. Is that what I'm going to do? And I just let it run?
That's correct. Now mine, I don't have to put it up by the speaker at all. I sit at the head table and I'm probably 6 feet away from the speaker, and it picks up really well. It picks up really, really well. So what you do is you go to your iPhone and I believe it's under utilities.
Okay.
Yes. So I don't know if you can see this. So you go to your iPhone, go to utilities, and see this right here where it says voice. That's your little recording device. And when you click on that, you see the red button at the bottom, you just hit that button and it starts to record. Now here are the recordings that I have archived, and it saves them for you. And then you can go back in and erase them.
Okay.
And it works really well. You don't have to, I mean, if you feel more comfortable purchasing a little recording device, they're not very expensive either. But the main thing is that I wanted to let everyone know today is that you tell your audience that you're recording before you start.
Yes.
And if you need more help with that, you can contact me and
I will. I will after this conference. I will be contacting you because I have a lot of questions.
Awesome.
Because I do record everything. Before I even became a recording secretary, I have notes. And then, but these notes are a little different and what you need to look for. And I'm so glad that you're going to bring that up and tell us next time exactly what needs to be in the body. And I'm looking forward to that. But thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next question or comment comes from Debbie. Debbie, you have a question or a comment?
And really just a comment, two of them. One of them is that about motion forms. My club has motion forms, but quite frankly, sometimes in the heat of a discussion, somebody wants to make a motion and they're where the motion forms. So writing them on a piece of paper and handing them to the recording secretary will suffice. It doesn't, I mean, it's perfect if you can put them on a motion form, but just make sure that they're written. I've done that a couple of times. Something's come up in one of our meetings and suddenly I want to make a motion and I'm scribbling it really fast, usually before I say it so I can hand it off. That's one thing. And also keep in mind, I know that Cindy has an iPhone and many of you have iPhones, but the Android phones, my Samsung phone also has a voice recorder function. My guess is that most of the smartphones that have internet access also have a voice recorder function. So it's not just limited to iPhones. I just wanted to make that comment too.
Fantastic.
Debbie.
Thank you for that. So this is also the time where if you have a tip or a tool or a task or something that you do as a secretary that could be very useful to the other secretaries in the room or to someone that serves as a secretary on your board, this is a wonderful time to do that. As a technology teacher, I have to tell you there's a great tool called Dragon Speak that will literally type your entire speech out for you as you speak. So if you know what, Cindy, I'll send you some of those tools we use with kids that are on the spectrum, and that allows you they could literally just type out what the board is saying. So
Perfect.
yeah, just
Thank
those
you.
kind of things. All right, so Sheila, you have a question or a comment?
It's back to Debbie. Debbie, you said that there's a place on your Samsung that will record. I'm looking for that very thing. Can you tell me what I would go to find there?
Can you swipe up and get to a place where all of your applications are there?
Yes.
Look under V for voice recorder.
Thank you.
You know, that's good to know because Apple and Samsung does everything opposite. So you're just not going to know.
Exactly.
But I tell people this often and they come back to me and say that was so insulting, but please don't be insulted. If you go to Google search and you look and you put in how to record on my Samsung 6, it will literally type out for you instructions on how to exactly do a Samsung 6 recording. My students use it all the time for their homework, which is unfortunate. But if you're trying to learn something and you just need a step-to-step, it will actually put it out for you in black and white right in front of you. So When I say Google it, I'm not just telling you to go away. I'm actually saying it might be easier for you to find it in a step-by-step manner. Okay, so who else might have something to share that they've learned as a secretary? Yes, Debbie.
Actually, let me go back, Sheila. My other phone, the voice recorder was there automatically. This new phone that I just got, I did have to download it. So I went to the Play Store and downloaded a recorder. There are a couple of options, and if I see you later in the week, I'll show you which one I've got. And I was just going to check to see how much this thing costs. I also have this little digital recorder thing, which doesn't show up really well with my background. And I was going to check to see how much it cost, but sometimes I take that. So as Cindy said, there are other devices that you can use, small, and nobody notices that you have them.
Right, I just saw that I need to download it. Thanks.
So as some of you ladies that are in the room that are already recording secretaries for your clubs, have you had your first meeting and how did it go? Do you need any help getting started? Or did you get through it okay?
Yes, we have a question. Oh, a question or a comment went away. All right, so we'll bring them back in. And that's a wonderful way to share a little bit about your struggles or your successes. Please step in and let us know how it's going. So it looks like your name is Tish, but I don't want to assume that. Okay, go ahead and unmute and tell us your question, please.
Hi, ladies. I hope I didn't miss it, but I wanted to ask, does that written motion form need to be attached to the minutes? Or once you have it in the minutes, then you don't need that form?
Right. So that also is something that we'll go into a little bit of detail more in the next workshop, but I do keep all the motions together. So at your club level, you might, it's probably best just to keep the motion form, the original motion form, and that way you have it.
Thank you.
Back up to your minutes.
Yes, Lynn Youngstrup, you have a question or a comment?
Yes, I'm my club's recording secretary, and I find that we've had some meetings that I need to transcribe what I have taken down immediately when I get home, or I forget what went on because sometimes things happen so fast that you can't get it all written down. And if I wait any amount of time, I kind of forget the little nuances that went on that should be in the minutes.
That is definitely an issue, and that's why it's so important to make sure and work on the minutes as soon as you return from wherever you are, whether it's a club meeting, district meeting, or state. The other thing that's really important is work off of the agenda. Make sure you have a copy of the agenda. This is actually the September board call, and I already have it printed out. This will be going into my book. What I do is I set up a binder for each meeting, and I put a copy of the call, a copy of the agenda, which is basically the same thing as the call, and then my president, Ms. Barbara Briley Barrett, is kind enough to give me a copy of her scripted agenda. And that really helps because then you can just kind of follow along. When you go back to write your minutes, you have that agenda and you remember what the order of the meeting was, and it just kind of, then you're just filling in the blanks, so to speak. So make sure you have a copy of your agenda and or a copy of the scripted agenda from your president. It really makes life a lot easier.
Fantastic, thank you. Debbie, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, just a comment, and I'm sorry I keep doing this, but
That's okay.
sort of been around the horn with this in my own club. We had a club recording secretary that taking minutes drove her crazy. You're right, because she couldn't get it all down fast enough, and then she'd have to rewrite it and take care of it right away. So we require now at both club and district that every speaker provide a written copy of their report to the recording secretary before they begin, so that if you deviate from it, she can make notes right on your copy, or if you didn't say something that you had planned to, she can cross it off. And the secretaries in my club have said that has made it so much easier to require a written report in the secretary's hand before the speaker gets to the podium. Just thought I would share that.
Thank you. That is huge. Yes. And at the state level, as all of you that have ever presented a report, you know that it's required that you provide 3 copies. And that is why you provide those 3 copies, because 2 copies go, as we said, as a permanent record in that bound book, that one goes into the archives and one goes to our state president and the other one's for me. So that's why we have the 3 copies. So thank you for providing those, and thank you for mentioning that, Miss Debbie.
That's great. Okay, we have another question or comment from Marilyn. Marilyn?
Debbie, thank you for bringing up those reports, because it's very important that we get them, and we need to get them early. Like you said, we need to get before they begin to talk, before they get up there to speak, so that we know what's going on. And we do require 3 copies of it. One goes to the president, one goes to the VP, and then I get a copy. So it's very, very important that we get those. At our district meeting on Friday, a lot of them skipped it. And I know that my president got verbal about that. It's required. So that's one thing. And the other thing, did you talk about minute reviews at all? I don't know, but I have 3 reviewers that I call upon randomly at the district meeting. And so as soon as I get my minutes transcribed, then I send them out to my reviewers, and what they're looking for are errors. You know, whatever grammatical errors, whatever the case may be, and then they ship them back to me, corrected, and I can revise it. So I don't know if you talked about that or if that's going to be at the next workshop.
That's going to be in the next workshop also.
Okay.
Yes, we'll talk about
Okay.
that a little bit more. And the difference between a draft and the final draft of the minutes. Yes. So there's some little tricks of the trade that we can do that we'll be sharing with you next time.
So
So yeah,
today's
come back.
workshop, yeah, well, yes, come on back. So today's workshop is your first days in the office. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the video so that we can actually share. Hang on just a second. Let me get it over here. I have to put it in my big screen so I can see it. All right, here we go. Let me stop.